There we go. Rich, you look very respectable in this picture.
I'm wearing the same shirt as Roger, my Ace Director shirt.
Very nice.
Oh.
Mine just came in a couple of days ago. So
Yeah.
I had mine on yesterday at the conference, and now it is in the laundry basket because it needs to be in the laundry basket.
There you go.
So we're usually pretty free format here, Rich, and normally we start off with you allow you to introduce yourself and talk about your hot topics. We do have some sort of laid back kind of questions. We definitely like to hear some of your war stories, and I've heard a couple already. Like the bug that crawled out of the underground computer room. So that was
at a well-known telecom.
So we definitely would like to hear some of those, but we just thought I would turn it over to you. I'll stop sharing this thing, but I usually just put that up as a
yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Rich, CIO, written some books, specialize in Oracle. I probably do a lot of machine learning now. Went back to school, actually went to MIT to do a little bit of machine learning, and that's where I spend a lot of my time these days, is on machine learning. But not a lot there. I mean, I've written a few books. I find that to be the most challenging thing. I remember when I wrote my first book, I told them I'll be done in a week or two. It took a year. And when I started getting behind on their schedule, and they said, okay, you need a schedule, I started, looking on the internet for ways to speed up the process. And I found a guy who was a grad student, and this is the early days of the web. And the grad student stayed up 2 days, and then he would sleep every other day. So I told my wife, I'm going to do this. I saw it on the internet. She goes, aren't you telling me the internet doesn't have always truthful things? Are you sure this is going to work? So I do this. I do it the first time. I get up fine. 2 more days up, sleep. She has a hard time waking me up. Next time, she said, you were so hard to wake up. I'm never doing this again. And I said, it's okay. You know what? The next time after that, it's going to be Friday night. And it was Friday night. And I said, I'm going to get up on my own Saturday morning. So I set an alarm, put it under the bed so that it would wake me up first thing in the morning. And I get up, and I'm going to get up at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. And it doesn't go off. And I look at it and I go 7:45 or 7:30 or something like that. I'm like, I'm early. And she goes, Rich, it's Sunday.
Excellent.
And I missed the whole door. I missed an entire day.
Mm-hmm.
So you were a former Oracle employee. You started back in 87.
I was.
87. Is that right?
You got it.
I remember you telling us the binder clip story. Would you like to?
Uh-oh.
I think the statute of limitations is up on that one.
Okay, but you're coming out of the gate big. Rob, have you ever heard this story?
No, I have not.
Oh, it's a good one. So I got to go to Oracle to do this job. Was designing skyscrapers, electrical engineer I went to Purdue for electrical engineering. I'm working at one of the best out there, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, who built the Sears Tower for one, the Burj it built. And they basically built all the tallest buildings.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at this place called Oracle, and they say, you got to come to this place. They're moving so fast. They're out of control. And it was a guy I knew then in the Marines. He said, you got to come to this. You fit perfect. And I thought, well, why do I fit perfect into this place that's out of control? So anyway, I go, I'm in the bathroom and I dropped something and I went to pick it up and it split my pants from top to bottom.
Oh, no.
Now I'm designing buildings and the electrical systems to some degree by a product that IBM wrote, and it's called a database. It's the first I ever heard of a database. So anyway, I don't know what to do. So I walk carefully over to the supply room, and I can't think of what will repair this, maybe some glue or something, but I find binder clips and I go, this would work. So I loaded down and I have a whole line of binder clips going down. I mean, I didn't split like a little hole. It was all the way down,
The whole seam.
the whole seam. So I go into this interview and I sit down, very uncomfortable, I might add. And I'm sitting there and the guy's like, I don't know. You're pretty good at this. I don't know, database, but I don't know if you're ready for Oracle. And I'm starting to kind of squirm in my seat. And just then a binder clip grabbed onto me. And I jumped out of my seat. And I didn't know what to say because the guy like fell back. He's like, "What?" And I go, "I want this job." And he goes, "Okay, you got it. You want it that bad, you got it." And that's how I got my first job at Oracle. There you go.
Right.
So what this is a lesson for university students. When you go to your interview with one of the big corporations, binder clips.
That's it. That's
So
it.
they still exist.
Yeah, they do.
As my wife will say, she said, when you talk to students, always tell them the worst thing that happens to you at different places in your job, it's going to be the thing that makes you stronger.
Mhm.
So I thought, okay.
So you use Chief Innovation Officer. A lot of people use CIO as Chief Information Officer, but I was just
Sure.
wondering, I guess maybe you chose that or that was given to you at Viscosity. Can you tell
A
us
little bit of both. I think initially they wanted me to be the CIO, Chief Information Officer. And I said, well, what's unique about a CIO? The average lifespan of a job is 18 months. So your job's almost over. And I said, I'm moving into machine learning and I'd really rather focus on innovation instead.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, that's great. But I think you're just always looking to, what I do is I do a lot of talks to let people know what's coming next. I always tell people, you want to win in life, remember something Lou Holtz would tell his team. And he said, remember the acronym WIN. What's important now? What's important now? Go to the future, find out where things are going, then come back to today and say, what's important right now to get to that future. So I'm always trying to look ahead and then kind of come back to today and tell people, what's important now. What's important now? Machine learning, obviously, is going to be very important as time goes on, but 23C is very important as the next landing to see what's new. 19C, if you're not on it, and if anyone's out there not on 19C yet, that's not good. You need to get there right away. But I always look at autonomous database and say that's going to take away some of the work you're doing now. It'll tune the system. It'll automatically put a patch on before you even know it needs a patch. That's why it's great. And use that so that you could spend more time on things like AI and machine learning.
You talk a lot about getting folks to fully utilize the existing features of the database. So can you say something about your encouragement there?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people go to the next version because they're kind of pushed there and know I need to get the next long-term version on. So I need to get to 19C, but they forget what some of the new features are. One of the best features on 19, as long as you're on 1908 or later, is in memory, at least at a base level where you could have 16 gig automatically where there's no charge for the in-memory option. And then the other one would be three easy for me to say, 3 pluggable databases. So you can have multi-tenant as well. So those are 2 features you really need to have. Now, my number one tip for database in general is the security of Oracle. People come out with all kinds of different databases and they really forget all the decades of different pieces of security that have been put in Oracle or the speed that has been put into an Exadata.
I get me talking on security and you'll never shut me up.
That's good. That's good.
Well, Rich, you were also pushing cloud implementations before most people even heard the term.
Yes, they put me in a giant room. I decided to speak on cloud because Oracle said, hey, we want to push, what we're doing on cloud. They put me in this giant room. Nobody came. The next year I did the same talk. Oh, now I get a 25% of the room is filled, same room. Next time it's almost full. I mean, it's a massive amount of people. So it took time, I think, for the audience to get there, similar to machine learning right now. I think people know it's in the back of their mind, kind of haunting them. They know it's important. But what people don't know about machine learning is 80% of machine learning projects fail. 80% of the machine learning project has to do with the data. So when you think of who does machine learning, data scientists, nothing against them, but that's only 20% of the job. How about the other 80%? You need that data, DBA or someone that's very good at data.
Well, and you've said it, I've said it, Roger said it. The DBA is the one who knows the data.
Yeah.
I can say time and time again, it's like when the developers have a problem, when the users have a problem and it's with the data, they're talking to the DBAs, and you were usually pretty good about getting it fixed. And we're also a lot of times key in the design of the schemas.
Yes. They understand the whole data store. They also understand the business maybe more than most of the people in IT.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You've also talked a lot, Rich, about the next job for the DBAs, I guess, getting folks to switch their mindset from the operations perspective to exactly what we're talking about, knowing the application, adding the business value to the company and so forth.
Yes. And be more valuable. I'll tell DBAs, if you want to be paid twice as much and work half as long, well, you got to move from the DBA team to the data science team. They go home at a reasonable hour and, they pay a whole lot more and they value your work a whole lot more. The DBA is kind of this forgotten, oh, you're doing maintenance, I don't want to worry about that. When do they worry about it? When things go wrong. But the DBAs tend to be very overworked, but not always perfectly directed. I wrote something, I didn't write something. They interviewed me for Forbes, and I talked about data being the most important thing in a machine learning project and how autonomous database could free up your DBA to help you to do that. And 38,000 C-level people read it. So we'll see. Hopefully that helps the DBA a little more. But I think you have to be more of a data architect or a data administrator versus a database. It doesn't have to be Oracle. I mean, I could go through Big Data SQL to get to Hadoop in a secure way instead of going to Hadoop. So there's a lot of NoSQL databases out there that are not very secure that now I can go through Oracle to add that security layer.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So does Oracle have, you think, a good set of data dictionary type of tools to help people understand their disparate data sets and so forth? Because, we have interview with Kent Graziano. That was the big thing that he was working on, is pulling data structures or data models out of JSON data documents and that type of thing.
Sure. Well, I'll say this about the X dollar table in the V dollars is I asked a few questions to ChatGPT on my book, and none of them were correct. And one of them was where if you wanted to look at the buffers and see a little bit more about what's happening in memory, what table do you go to? And wrong answer. Mm-hmm. And the answer is X dollar BH. But as far as pulling them out, I believe that when you're going after a data warehouse, you generally want to leave data where it is. And you generally want to go through some sort of, I think the modern multi-cloud world is, leave the data where it is. I think Larry once said, leave the data where it is. Oh, it's in Oracle. Well, use machine learning in Oracle then. So he wants, of course, everything in Oracle. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to go to different data sets, whether it's AWS, Azure, or Oracle, and be able to do that. And Oracle really gives you the tools. Now, as far as JSON goes, I'll give you one thing on JSON is AWS and who was it? AWS and Google, I think, used to see who was, oh no, I take it back. AWS and Mongo used to do benchmarks to see which one was faster, and they were very close. Each one would pass the other. So Oracle came out with their JSON database, and they said, well, let's check it. And it was twice as fast, and it was half the price as the other ones. But I'll tell you, with 23C, you're going to have JSON in the database. With 23C, rather, you have JSON in the database. With 21C, you have JavaScript in the database. So it makes life a whole lot easier. Now, can you still do something in Mongo? Sure. You can go through an Oracle API to Mongo if you want to look at that in a more secure way.
Yeah, you I think you mentioned that you were in the Marines early on, and I
Yes.
saw in another interview that you had talked a lot about, courage and integrity and character leadership type of talks. Can you speak to us a little bit about that?
Well, I still do a talk on uncommon leaders, and I try to do that a lot to high school or college students. And it happened to be a talk the Marines gave me, and they just kind of handed it to me, and they say, here's a talk. You're going to be giving it in a couple of minutes. So, be ready for that. But I think on the courageous side, I think DBAs have to be careful because they work a lot of hours and they have to make certain decisions. And the best tip I can give you is one they gave me in the Marines, and they said there's a fine line between bravery and stupidity. Don't cross that line. But different things like unselfishness, integrity. A lot of people don't know what integrity is. I mean, integrity is honesty, but I say it's like wood, of which me and Roger are both, we can call us woodsmen to some degree. But if you look at the grain of wood, you say this wood has fine integrity when you're looking at a nice table or something like that. So what is it? It's honesty, but it's over time. This has been built over time, and there's different peaks and valleys it's going through. Some of the grains are closer, some are further apart. I don't know if that answers it, but they also tell you to have tenacity
because it encourages people. And I know that I had mentioned earlier, I think before we started recording, that I have your book, and that you gave me and you signed for me and so forth, and that was one of the the key takeaways from that, is be bold, be courageous, do great things, type of thing. So I appreciate the fact that you're constantly encouraging folks to learn the most about Oracle, use all the features, and get into some of the new features, and make sure that you're at least know about them, and
Sure.
start to figure out how to bring them into your solving the business problems.
And I think you and Rob are kind of calm guys and very easy to talk with. You have a lot of character, but there's this intrepidness, this fearlessness that you guys have. So I think it's something that's in certain people and not in others.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think they need to be very loud to be, this dominating, fearful person to other people. But I think being intrepid and just being fearless at accomplishing things, being fearless at helping people, being fearless, being able to tell the truth. I told my wife, I'll just add one last thing. I said, what should I say in this interview? She goes, well, you ought to tell them about your betting, where you deleted the whole system. And I was like, that's not on my list of war stories. And she goes, oh no, you should tell them that. And it was one time where I told them they should go to version 6. And it was on Data General. Version 6 was not that stable, but I had put it up somewhere, and they said, we're going to take a year and we're going to get to version 6. I said, I could just do it this weekend while I'm here. And so we went into the CIO's office, and she was the CIO. She was the DBA. And she said, you told me you're going to back me up when I want to do something. She goes, I want to move us to version 6. And the guy literally jumped out of his chair, and he sat down, fell off his chair. Going,
did he have a clip in his pants? Did he have a clip in his pants?
Not that I know of, but he jumped up quick and said, what are you talking about? And we eventually started to do that. So we're going over, and it's not compiling correctly. And I've got to keep deleting it and deleting it and deleting it and redoing it and redoing it. So they hired people to be on, I don't know what it was, 8 hours each, that you're here for Rich. And this 8 hours, go get him food, make sure he can stay at the computer. And I keep having to delete, the database and rebuilding it and using different kind of things to link it together. And I would do a remove -r, rm -r, very dangerous. in the Oracle database. And one time I was in I don't know why I was in root, but I was in root, and remove -R deleted the whole operating system. So I got to call the DG guy, get him out of bed, and say, I need you to rebuild the operating. What did you do? You deleted the whole operating system? So I said, yes, but don't tell everybody. He's like, oh, okay. So the people are coming in. Now everything's working well. We have it up in time. Everything's working well. And they come in and they go, yeah, we heard you deleted the operating system. So I figured I'd tell you here publicly because he might be around there telling people.
Now, my father
I
served.
had one like that where I actually got an award for saving the day. So in other words, I caused the problem. And then the VP of IT found out that I had saved the day, but she didn't hear that I had actually caused the problem.
There you go.
And I wound up with like a $250 service award in my paycheck. I just kept
Now my father served in the Marine Corps, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. He was at Chosin Reservoir, retired in 71.
And that makes sense. His son will be a DVA. But
oh yeah,
I like him already.
It means don't bother asking.
There you go.
And you rebel against your parents. Every kid rebels against their parents. So I joined the Navy. I was like, I'll show you, Dad.
Okay.
I'm joining the Navy. But one thing he told me that at the time I gave it no weight whatsoever. And he would always tell me success comes and can, failure comes and can't.
Very good.
But I'm an 18-year-old kid who knows everything.
Of course.
But then I'm in the Navy and I got an opportunity to meet my idol, Grace Hopper.
Grace Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
Found the first, well, I'll let you say
it. She is the goddess. And I still have the microsecond she gave me. So she spent about 20 minutes talking to me. And I remember her, and she comes up to about here on me, petite little lady. And she's poking me in the chest and she goes, young man, success comes and can, failure comes and can't. And I'm going, why are you validating what my dad always told me?
No, I like the fact Grace Hopper found the first bug.
Yes.
And people said, they eventually started calling them bugs, and she goes, no, they really found a bug. And they didn't believe her. And she literally went on the shelf, pulled out the book of the issue she had, opened it up, and there was, I think it was a moth, which had connected two connections and shorted out the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, there's your bug. I kept it.
And she probably knows the root cause too.
There you go.
Oh, she was a wonderful woman. She gave me these little tidbits that I still remember. Now, mind you, this is from over 40 years ago. So they may have, my memory has probably warped just a little bit. Another one
with age.
It gets better with age. Another one she was telling me, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, that's good.
And you hear it now, some influencer going, you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I'm like going, you did not make that up yourself, but we'll give you credit.
Yeah.
So
Rich, I think I heard one of your stories in the basement of a computer room
about a bug. No.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is my partner, I had two, Brad Brown, Joe Trezzo at Tusk, and Brad, I'm literally driving home from a client I've already worked. I'm like, I'm going to get home early this Friday night. And it's maybe, I don't know, 4:15, maybe 4:30. He's like, Rich, I know you're up north. Can you stop at this very large telecom? If you think it's the largest telecoms, it's one of them. They need some help. They just need, can you stop by for 10 minutes? I was there till Monday. I'll start there. So, and didn't sleep anytime in between. So I got there and they said, the system is down. We can't rebuild the backup. We can't get it back. We have an issue. I don't care what you do, but try to fix this problem. And this was many versions ago. And every time you start it up, I would go through and look at different settings of the init.org. And I started looking at the undocumented ones. You know, is there any way that I can get this thing up? So finally, it's maybe, and it took a long time to do that even once. It would take maybe an hour because it was humongous. And they said, you know, the guy says, I'm going to go home. You know, it's almost Monday morning. It was like 4 a.m. or something. He said, I want to go home and put on a suit. He goes, I want to look good when I'm fired. He goes, because when they come in and the system isn't up, and in those days, you didn't have to be up 24/7. You just had to be up. I think it was 7 a.m. you had to be up by. So anyway, I'm doing this and I finally come across one that's called allow reset logs. Allow reset logs corruption equal true that I can set to allow reset log segments. And basically it allowed you to have this inconsistent connection with, it disables basically the SCN issue that you have when you connect different data files and things like that.
Mhm.
So I got it up in a shaky state, but he said it was fine. Anything. He just wanted anything. So finally this thing starts and I'm thinking about waiting for him to get there at 7, but I'm just so tired. So I get up and I'm like, okay, I'm leaving. And I look at the machine, and the reason we're in the basement is that's where they had all their stuff.
Mhm.
And it was locked behind this cage, which they had to open and all this stuff. So I look at that machine and I go, finally, you're up and running. And literally a giant bug walks out. It was like a beetle, but it was big, like twice the size of any that I'd ever seen before. So I catch this thing and I put it in a clear glass and I put it on his desk with something on top of it. And so he calls me, you know, when I get home and he's like, you know, thank you so much for doing this. And I said, did you get your bug? And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I put a bug that crawled out of this machine. I tell him the story. And he goes, there's an empty glass here. He goes, that's all that's here. He goes, it's gone. And I was like, okay, look out for that one.
That bug was so big, he tipped the glass. Got
He
it.
was.
That was one big beetle.
Yeah. But it actually happened. And I was like, nobody would ever believe this. And then my wife is, are you sure you saw a bug? Are you sure? Been up for a long time. I would tell DBAs, you need to be up from, they'd say, how long do I have to stay up? I'd say anytime from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. Monday, 5 p.m. Friday till 8 a.m. Monday, 63 hours, because that's how much time you have to fix whatever the problem is, like Roger did earlier. And if you can, you get a bonus like him, probably.
Now, do you remember when they still had Halon back in the data centers?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if do they still use Halon? I'm not sure.
I think they're very careful with where they do, but because it takes the oxygen out of the room. So you got to be very careful. Yeah.
Sucks it right out.
Yeah.
I was on one contract. This was not me. And thank God it was not me. I was on this one contract and system admin and it was one of those government / private combinations that
partnership.
Yeah, partnerships. And we're talking massive data center. Sysadmin lets a contractor DBA into the room to get to the server and left the DBA in there.
Oh, wow.
And when the DBA goes to leave, you know, the doors are closed and there's 2 buttons. There's a green button to open the door and a red button
to set off the halide.
He hit the red button.
But why red?
Why?
Okay. Yeah.
A bunch of people got fired because it also, when you hit the red button, not only did it release the halon, it cut all the power to the room.
Oh, wow.
And then he managed to get himself out of the room. And then it was like going, well, nobody was here to let me out. We're all sitting here going, you did what? Well, it took a long time to get that room restored, but a lot of people lost their job over it too.
And they have new standard operating procedures that
Yeah.
that's the press the green button.
I'll tell you. No, go ahead.
Not only press the green button, but put the green button and the red button a little further apart.
Or maybe a warning sign on the red button. I remember being somewhere, I probably can't say the name, but one of the largest soft drink makers, I'll call them. There's only a couple there, a few there, we'll say. But I'm there because they had just acquired a couple of companies, very large companies, I might add. One of them that was a fast food company that all over the US, all over the world, basically. But anyway, the guy said, you need to fix this system. We can't run the payroll. It's not fast enough. Got to find some way to make this faster. You're the tuning expert. You figure it out. And so then after I've looked through everything, and this is maybe version 7-ish, 6 or 7, maybe it was 6. But I said, I've looked through everything. I said, I can't find any way to make it faster. I mean, I know how to make things fast, but I don't know what this is. And he said, well, I'm going to be fired on Monday. And I thought, I've heard this before. This means I'm going to be up a long time already. And he said, so you got to find something. And he goes to do something. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go outside, call my wife. I go outside. I'm locked out of the building. So I'm outside this large building. Cars pull up, and it's the police for this business. And they're like, who are you? What are you doing here? What are you doing here in the middle of the night? And I said, well, I'm working on the system. And I give them all this. And they're like, we'll see about that. And so eventually the other guy comes out, finds me. He's like, what are you doing going outside? You can't go outside. So anyway, what I found, I just started going through $V views one at a time, just to see, is there anything in there that'll tell me something? And what did I come across? A little view, which almost every DBA knows today, but it was called $V SQL area. And using $V SQL area, I was able to find what the top SQL was, what the top problem with that SQL was, and then I fixed it. But it didn't exist. And so then I did a talk at the IOUG conference on $V SQL area, and nobody had ever heard of it. Yep. And a year later, I watched a panel where they were like, what's the best thing you could for tuning on Oracle? And they went down the panel. Every one of them said $V SQL area. I said, I lived through a painful life at this place to find that view. And they're all up there. They know it now, which I thought that was pretty good. It takes a year to get out to everybody.
Well, that's that's more or less how I got started with performance stuff, or really learning, is some of the stuff that you guys at Tusk published. And back in those days, you had to buy the conference proceedings, right?
Yes, you did.
You go through the slides page by page, because there was no, you couldn't just browse, or search, the internet.
You did. And you had to get somebody who was using something that was new. The other thing my wife said, she only told me one other thing. Tell them about rack. Rack in the beginning was so bad, my kids knew what rack was. And there were, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they know what rack is. I go, rack is so bad that they know what it is. So I go to a conference, and I want to talk about rack just to get people to understand this pain. And I said, and somebody asked, and they go, how many times have you put rack on? And I said, 25 times. He goes, there's not even 25 rack customers out there. It's not possible. And I said, no, that was the first time I put it on. It took 25 times to get it to work. And true story.
Interesting. So now, did rack come out of clustered Oracle? Because I remember back in version 5, we were running clustered Oracle, and but I don't remember the sort of the lifespan or the life cycle of that.
It definitely was slightly different, but it came out of that, and that was only on certain hardware that you could do. Could do that
on VAX VMS in the day.
Yes, and that's what it was on, VAX VMS.
We had clustered Oracle, and I I crashed the database with one SQL statement.
Wow.
I did
Oh my.
lock table and shared update mode, no wait, semicolon returned, and I did delete star from table was a 5,000 row table. And as soon as I hit return, semicolon return, the database crashed. Boom,
Oh
like
my
that.
gosh.
So it's like, that was really weird. And I just went,
Did you fix it?
well, no, because I was just a developer. So I went to
I went home.
I went to lunch and came back and I came back
It
late,
just
took
left.
a late lunch, came back and I was like, where was I? And I stretched my arms like, okay, table and shared update mode, no wait, semicolon return, no problem. Delete star from table, semicolon. And I was just about to hit return. I said, the last time I did this, I crashed the database. And I thought, no, this is impossible. Like, boom, hit return. Database
Of course.
and I just sort of sink down in my cubicle like this too.
Wow.
Because I knew I was in trouble. 20 minutes later, my boss, who goes by the name of JRJ4272,
I like that.
he comes into my office and he says, I got Joe Rigsby on the phone. And he's saying, what did RDC 0208 do to put 5,000 NQ entries on the VAX VMS and blow it? But that was
Wow.
clustered Oracle. So VMS was blaming clustered Oracle and Oracle was blaming VMS.
I remember Oracle used to run on the VAX. It was probably the best operating system for a great number of years. But I was going to say, in the early years of Oracle, IBM had, you guys probably know this story, but IBM was writing the database. And you also had Michael Stonebreaker, who was building the first, if you think of Postgres, that's after Ingress. So he was doing Ingress. I think it was Berkeley, if I'm not mistaken. So Michael Stonebreaker is doing this with research students. IBM is starting to build its database, and Oracle wants to learn this. And the guy who's the head of the database says, I keep getting this call from Larry Ellison asking me about this, asking me about that. And it was all public information because you couldn't copyright the software. People thought just having the hardware was the advantage and the software was irrelevant. It's just give that away for free. And he said, we finally said no when he started asking for our error codes. And I'm thinking he gave him the entire database, but at the error codes or 600, no, I'm not telling you what we use for that. So anyway, Oracle starts building this, and it's Bob Miner and Bruce Scott. If you think of Scott Tiger, Tiger was his daughter's cat, by the way. So they build it on this little PDP-11, it's called. It's about the size of a carton of cigarettes. And so the guy from IBM goes to the next conference and he wants to see what Oracle's doing. And he sees this on a carton of cigarettes, and he's showing them how they update records or query records and things like that from Bob Miner at the time. And he says, wow, fast, simple, cheap, it's going to sell. And he said, at IBM, he said, we were in a room, the size of 2 or 3 large conference rooms. He said, and that's how big the computer was that we were working on. And Oracle had no idea that we're working on this gigantic computer and they have this little mini thing. And he thought, these guys are going somewhere. There's no way that we could beat that, or, when are we going to get it to that? And then Bruce Scott started working on the assembler language while Bob Miner was working on the port to C originally. And I remember they called it the Roach Motel of databases because they could get data in, but they couldn't get it out. And I introduced Bruce Scott at the IOUG conference, and I said this, and Bruce Scott gets up there, he goes, Rich, he goes, we actually could get the data out. It just wasn't the right data. And then investors would come and they would ask Larry, they would say, does anyone ask for their money back? Because they would have these issues going on. And Larry goes, nobody asks for their money back, but people do ask us to get their data back.
Well, I used to use the term data prison.
Data prison.
But usually that's because people don't tell, or necessarily people who develop the databases don't tell the people who use them what the
Mhm.
data model is and how to actually operate it. So in other words, they put the stuff in, and then you haven't properly built your application or told your users how to get it out. So that's why I use the
There
term
you
data
go.
prison.
Yeah,
There you go.
until a couple of years ago, I had a client that was running Oracle 5 on VMS, and it was a government client. And
That's
they're
pretty solid, isn't it? V5 on VMS. Pretty
yeah,
solid.
oh yeah, it's pretty solid. Their biggest problem was getting parts for the VAX. That was their
Ah,
biggest problem. And I would go there about once a month, make sure the backups were working, as long as they had no complaints, check. And I kept going, can you please upgrade? Think about 7,
sure. That's good.
It was running SQL Forms though, 2.0.
and Eufy.
SQL,
Yeah.
SQL Forms 2.0 was the first class I taught at Oracle. Just to let you know, they handed me no, I was in the class. I take it back. I was taking a class, and they're like, sit in this class for forms. And so I'm sitting there, go through, it's like Wednesday, and they're like, Niemiec, get out here. And I come out, and they hand me some binders, and they go, here you go. Take these. You're going down to Huntsville, Alabama, to the, I forget who it was, somewhere in the government, somebody in the Department of the Army. But they said, you're teaching this class. And I go, what class? They go, the one you're in right now. And I go, I've only seen 2.5 days. They go, okay, good luck. See you later. Walked away. And that was it.
So you had used the overhead projector where you turned the clear
The
foil.
slides. Yes.
Yep.
No, amazing. And I got through it. I literally would stay up. I knew the first part of it, so I'd have to stay up late to learn the next parts.
Now, back in the day when my first company that used Oracle, this is back in 1985, Tom Siebel of Siebel Systems was our salesman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my friend, my coworker Demetrius, went to this database conference in Boston, and Larry Ellison gave this big speech and so forth. And he walks up to Larry Ellison and says, well, we're looking at Oracle and we're looking at Ingress, but Ingress is cheaper. And Larry goes, I'll match their price like that. So he comes back to the office and tells Tom Siebel that Larry said, I'll match their price. And Tom Siebel was not very happy about that. I mean, he was an excellent salesperson, but he was not happy about the fact that he had to match Ingress's price.
I heard a similar story, InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. If you ever heard of this, obviously these are guys that are doing good, Christ-driven people. They're obviously good in every way. And so they're looking at databases, and Larry's trying to sell them Oracle. And so, and I heard this from the DBA there. And he said, so Larry's saying, you guys should do it. It's very fast. And they go, well, if you can make it this fast, I forget what it was exactly. If you could make it so this stuff runs this fast in under a minute, then we'll buy it. And so Larry has the contract in his hand. And then he's saying, okay, put this version on. And they run their query. They go, oh, it's under a minute. That's very fast. He goes, okay, sign the contract. And they're like, okay. And they start signing, and they sign, and he's walking out, and they go, wait a minute, what about updates and things like that? And he goes, that's another story. He said, and he kept walking, didn't stop. And Larry was the original, built those original tables you saw in Scott Tiger, and he did it for sales demos.
Mm-hmm. Now, did he have to scale up? He didn't have to scale up that query either. He just had to run it once.
Yeah. No, Larry I remember Bruce Scott telling me once, he said the difference in Oracle was Larry. He said, me and Bob Miner wrote everything. He said, but Larry was the difference. And he said, we were trying to put it on the mainframe. He said, we had this coffee table, giant box of, I don't know what server it was, but they said we used it for a coffee table and we never got it running on it. They said, but in the next room, we had some other equipment, and me and Bob Miner are trying to figure out how to connect to the other room and do this and that. And we're saying, we're talking about, should we go over? Should we go under the floor? How are we going to do this? He said, and Larry just literally picks up a hammer, breaks through the wall, and he goes, there, run the wires, get it done. And he said that was the epitome of what Larry was like. It was just, he's going through stuff, whatever it takes to get there, he's making it happen. He's got that kind of Marine mentality to some degree. And the Marines are part of the Navy, I'll tell Rob. So you can always tell your dad that.
Yeah. I've told him many times. Sadly, he's not with us anymore.
Sorry to hear.
But one thing that
I think he's still with you. I
yeah.
didn't hear Kent yet, so he's still there.
Oh, believe me, a lot of his personality have rubbed off, and when I have to suffer fools, a lot of that personality starts coming out. It's like HR saying, did you call somebody stupid? I go, no, I asked them if they were stupid. I would never call somebody stupid.
He's very careful.
I'm very careful about my wording. But one thing that my papa taught me that you said Larry is emulating, it's adapt and overcome. We come across these issues all the time in life, business, Oracle, contracts, adapt and overcome.
That was our saying at Tusk, just to let you know. I brought that in.
Oh, really? Interesting.
It was just, they were like, we don't understand this fully. People would be like, they need to know everything about some product that Oracle had. And we would say, the three of us would say, we would go in and take the job. We don't know anything about it. We just figure we'd figure it out faster than them. And we're like, just adapt and overcome. And that just became the saying at Tusk.
Flexible, adaptable, resilient.
There you go. But that is a Marine saying as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I know it very well. And I try to live it every day.
Sometimes, the other thing is people that are knowledgeable, they do have to lead. You have to. Sometimes there's a fine line between bravery and stupidity. I remember being at a large utility for a city, and I knew a guy who shut down a whole city, killed the lights of the city, and the CEO brought him into his giant office, and he said, everybody says you are the best technologist we have, the best DBA, one of the best in the world, but if you ever do that again, you're fired. I'm telling you ahead of time. Just walk out. But I'm at this utility, and that's in the back of my mind, and they have corruption in the some of the data files, and the amount of time it's going to take. I can hear over here in this room where everybody's yelling. It's kind of the war room, we called it. And the CIO is there. He said, I'm going to have to fly a helicopter to get these people paid. I got to rent a helicopter, and I'm going to have to fly it over to get them paid, if that's when you can get the system back up. And I went over to I don't know if it was wasn't the DBA, like senior manager of DBAs or something like that, below the CIO, but above the DBA. And I said, the data files that are corrupted are indexes. I said, if we just drop those data files and rebuild the data files and then recreate all the indexes with a real large sort area size, we could redo that. And I'm telling you, it'll take less than an hour. I said, if we do it right. I said, you don't have to wait 8 hours. Especially if these people have to get paid today. And so he says, hey, Rich, I'm not going to make that decision, because if it doesn't come up, it's on me. And he walked out, and I thought, okay, here's the fine line between bravery and stupidity. And I walk over to the CIO and I said, I really think you could do this. He goes, did you tell them that? I said, I think you need to tell them if you want to make that decision. I go, it's not my choice to do that. And he said, no, we're doing it. And he calls the guy over who's kind of noticing from outside the room now, we're just talking to the CIO. What the heck are you doing? But he calls him over and he said, Rich said we could do this. What do you think of that? And he said, well, Rich is the expert at this. I'm not going to match up with him. If that's what you want to do, we'll be happy to do it. And we did it, and it worked. So that was doing that.
By doing that, you gave him political cover.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Still took an hour.
Probably a little under. Set the sort area size
Oh,
very
really?
high. You'd set it much higher. And we already had the scripts because we had, in those days, Tusk used to write these things that you could write a script that would build your indexes. It's in your book.
Mhm.
There you go. So,
Get it from the data dictionary.
yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I used to have a big Tusk poster by my desk of all the views. And I'd sit there and I'd turn around. Now, what view is it that I need to use today?
There you go. And do you guys remember the company called Platinum Flip? Andrew Filipowski, his name was Flip.
Yeah.
Platinum was big back in the day. Used to have tools for Oracle.
Oh, yeah.
We got that idea for a poster. I was walking there. Flip would hire me to look at companies that he was going to acquire. He said, see if they know what they're talking about or not. So he would hire Tusk to evaluate, basically, because they had some Oracle product or something that he wanted to have Platinum sell. So one day I walked by this cool poster. It had to do with the mainframe, but I thought, oh, that would be a great idea if we could do the $V views. And I went back to Tusk and told Brad and Joe, and Joe said, I got a script. I could pull those out of there and get that done. And me and Brad go, great. That sounds great. And that's how we started doing posters.
And that was before you could get, there was referential integrity in the database, so you could get all those foreign keys and
there you go.
packages and so forth.
Yeah, we used to have that. I remember when we got big enough where we had a 20 by 20 booth in the front. And we said, we got to do something cool here. So we thought, we're going to give everybody a key. And if their key opens this treasure box, then they win the big prize, whatever it was. And I don't know what the prize was back then, maybe a laptop or something like that, which were much more expensive back then. But we didn't have anything to like dress up this treasure. So the lady who was our secretary and our financial person, she actually was our tax person personally. And then she said, oh, I'll come. We said, can you come to work for us? And be basically our CFO, which she did. She said, well, why don't you put some custom jewelry there? And she said, I have some stuff I could give you. So we put this stuff all over the place. And this treasure looks really nice. People came in and grabbed all of it. All of it was gone by the end. Could not get it back. We started chasing people. We go, that's not ours. So we had to tell her we lost all her jewelry and give her some funds to buy new jewelry. But she was like horrified. True story, though.
Interesting.
We put it right by the posters and it didn't work well.
I was giving a talk in Moscow, Russia.
Wow.
Yeah. My first technical talk in Oracle, Russia, sponsored the talk, and they invite all of their customers in, and I'm giving the talk. And at the time, my company, we had pins with laser pointers on them. And I leave a whole bunch of these laser pointers out. And there was a gentleman in the front row just to my left was wearing a custom made suit. And I could tell. All right. Yeah. When you see a custom made suit, you know it.
Sure.
And there's this other young lady over to my right, kept asking me very detailed questions about customers. And I'm like, I'm sorry, ma'am, I do not discuss my customers. And she would ask it a different way. And she would ask it a different way. And I don't speak Russian.
Yeah.
And finally, this gentleman in the custom made suit says something in Russian, and she goes like this. I'm like, okay, I don't know what just happened, but I think he just told her to shut up.
I think he's in charge.
Like he's in charge. It turned out he was the CIO of FSB.
Wow.
So,
No, go ahead.
So anyways, at the end of the conference, everybody's coming by. Some people are picking up pins or that talk, just saying hello. She grabs a whole fistful of pins and walks out. I'm like going, yeah, take them. They're for you.
Yeah. I remember, you guys, I know have to have a story on this, but where you go into a war room, and I was in another country, I'll leave it at that. because it might tell who it is if I told you which country. They're that big. But I go there and they say, we need you to come to this. And it was after Thanksgiving that weekend. They're like, they got to do this. They got to report their numbers, and they can't do it. And they have to make the system faster. So I get there, and there's people from EMC, there's people from Oracle. Maybe I should have said all the names. There's people from HP. I mean, there's different ones, HP as well. And it's running Oracle, but SAP. Oracle is the database. So I've been reading the stats pack from this stats pack back then, instead of an AWR report. But I'm reading the stats pack all the way on the plane over. I get in there, I don't know what time it is, but it's night most of the year. We'll put it that way, or most of the day. But it's nighttime, and I go in there. I'm carrying my bags at this point. I go in there and I'm like, I'm going to go to the hotel. I just wanted to check in to let people know I'm in town. I don't know what it was, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And they go, no, you should go over to the meeting. He's in that meeting. And I thought, okay, I'll go in this meeting. So I go in the meeting, and it's like this, I don't know, like an arena where people go down, and there's one guy speaking in the center, and people are yelling at everybody, and da, 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 da. And the guy's like, we need to do this. No, we don't. We need to do this. No, we don't. We need to fix this. No, we don't. And they've been tuning this thing for months, all these guys. And I forget who called me, and I think it was EMC, who said, we'll pay you to come. And I gave them some outrageous number, like 10 times my hourly rate. And they said, okay, when can you be here? And that was the answer. So I thought, okay, now I got to go. So I go there, and I'm sitting and I'm listening to all this, and I'm thinking, none of this is going to help at all. And they're getting to the end of the meeting, and the guy's like, does anyone else want to add anything on the fix for tomorrow? So every night they would do the fix for the next day and see if it helps. And so I didn't want to say anything, but I thought, I know what's there. And I said, I got one thing. And I said, I've noticed this thing is running, and it takes almost 10% of the entire system. And I go, what is it, and why is it running? And somebody said, oh, that's to monitor something, and we don't use that at all. Nobody uses that. And I said, I think if you shut this down, it will improve performance by at least 10%. And then they all start yelling, well, who the heck are you? What are you talking about? What do you know about tuning? And I pulled out my tuning book. I go, this is the best-selling tuning book on Oracle. I wrote it. And the whole place got quiet. And the guy in the middle, he goes, we're going to only put your thing in, and we'll see how it goes. And it dropped the CPU on the system. And then they were like, the next war room meeting, everybody's like, okay, Rich, what do you want to do next? I was like, I don't know everything. But by the end, it went well. But I remember going through these cities that I would have to do from time to time. And Tusk eventually got acquired, but I'm going city to city across Europe in different places. I remember being in the UK, and the guy, whoever was taking me of the company that acquired us, has said, you got to do a talk in Luxembourg tomorrow. And I said, well, it's raining, and how we're going to get there? I said, we got to get there. I said, I speak in the morning. And I go, let's just drive there. And he goes, Rich, you're in England. It's an island. He goes, now, if you want to go down to the dock, sure. So eventually they moved it to the afternoon, and we got there, and it was okay. But I keep going city to city to city. And finally I get to the city, and I look out at the window, and I don't know what it is. And I'm like, I don't even know where I am. And I go, I don't know what it is, but it looks like 1950 Chicago. And it was Warsaw, by the way. So finally I get home from this trip, and I have my hands under the sink, and my wife's watching me from the distance. And she's like, hey, Rich. And I go, yeah. And she's telling me, you need to quit this international business job. It's just too much traveling around the world. But I got my hands, and I'm going there to wash my hands. She goes, Rich, you got to turn on the water. You're not in the airport. Use one of those handles, and maybe you need to just get rid of this job.
We have handles in this house.
Yes, true story. Unfortunately,
have you ever woken up and go, what country am I in?
Yeah, it was Warsaw
Oh, yeah, that's happened to me so
once.
many times.
It's a bad feeling, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It is. You wake up and you're like, okay, what country, what time zone? And my watch is, old fashioned wind up watch. It doesn't change itself to the time zone automatically.
Pre-cell phones.
Yeah.
I remember somebody was going live and I could drive. It was in Iowa. I won't say who they are, but they were big and important. And so I drive, I tell my wife I'm going on this thing. Maybe I'll take an overnight bag. I said, in case I stay overnight, I go, I don't plan to, maybe one night. She gives me my bag and it's stuffed, packed. And I'm like, what is this? She goes, this is a go live, isn't it? And I go, yeah. She goes, well, I just want to make sure you're prepared. She had put 7 shirts in there just to let you know it wasn't enough. But it's underground where everything's going on. And I'm like outside their war room. I'm not known enough to even know these people are working on this project that well. And I just started using Enterprise Manager, just come out, a good version of it. And I'm looking and I'm going, oh my gosh, I got a problem. And so I just started tuning. These are the problems. So then I'm listening outside as this thing goes live. And it's the day before it goes live. It's like the live test. And I can hear this room. It gets louder, 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 louder. So then I walk in the room and I say, I think we need to work on these 3 queries. And so we start working. There's a guy that has Toad and he says, well, here's the query. And we just work together. And this thing becomes a lot better. And so then finally I go outside just to take a break. We finally get a break. And I walk outside and my wife is calling me. Now, what I didn't know is your phone doesn't work underground in this place. So my wife's calling me and I'm saying, I go, yeah, how you doing? And she goes, are you okay? And I said, yeah. She goes, you told me you'd call me when you got, back at night, at the hotel. She goes, that was 2 days ago. And I go, it's been 2 days since I left. I didn't even know it. That 2 days have gone by. The CEO used to look over my shoulder at Enterprise Manager and go, okay, what's this? What's this? What are you doing now? I said, we're going to fix it. Don't worry. Got it up and running. It's a very well-known system. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, my wife knows more than me. I don't understand how. But she knew it was a go live. 7 days was not enough. I literally had to put my stuff in there. One of my partners, I'll tell you a story. When we got back to the hotel, finally, the first time, my room was like under repair. And I'm like, what is going on to my room? And they're like, you didn't get here. Days ago, we left you a message telling you we're remodeling. And the other 2 guys that are with me, they just leave. They go, you're on your own, buddy. He had slept through so much that they didn't know he was even alive. And they clipped the lock on his door to get in to see if he was still alive. He slept so long.
Oof, that's some crazy stories there.
Typical life of a DBA, right? I mean, how different is it than most DBAs out there? I mean, I think it's just the norm.
I try to solve my problems 9 to 5 type.
Yeah.
Again, but I've not been an operations DBA. I've always been sort of from the application side, and then helping teams, understand, more or less the development teams, or the support teams. They're having a problem, and then because my former company didn't have a lot of DBAs who knew that much about tuning. So, and I loved it, and there were a lot of things that were broken, 300 production Oracle instances and about 2,500 applications. So there was always something broken, but
the fact that we call that fun, maybe that's the problem.
Yeah,
because that does sound fun.
I think it has a lot to do with ADHD, because I'll get involved in trying to solve a problem, and a meeting I'm supposed to be at a meeting.
Yeah.
And I forget that. I had to get pinged by the manager, like, you need to show up.
I remember when I was writing the book, when I got back to sleeping every night, my wife's like, Rich, why don't you come and eat? She's calling down. I'm like, okay, I'll be up there in a minute. Rich, why don't you come and eat? And then all of a sudden she's coming down in her nightgown. Rich, I think you need to sleep. Eat something before you sleep, though. I put something out for you. And then I thought, I better hurry up and get this done. I hurry up and get it done. And she's coming down again. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, no, I'm turning off the computer now. She comes down her nightgown again. She goes, Rich, don't bother. It's the morning. And I was like, how did 10 hours go by that fast? How is that even possible? It's like the space-time continuum changes when you're tuning.
Well, you get intense and on point. And if you ever study flow, okay, I can't remember who wrote about it, but I've read a couple of really good books, and one of them is when you get into a flow state, you lose track of time. That is one of the things that it actually shuts down in your brain. So
I remember a lady who called it the fever. When you're coding, it's just like a fever that you hit. And she said, I've got the fever and I'm flying along. And then all of a sudden somebody interrupts me and is like, hey, I need some help. She goes, oh, just wrote a bug into the product. Don't even know it.
So we normally go about an hour, but and there's a lot more to talk about. I know that you had stated in the past that you did fencing in college, and you also stated here that you do some tree cutting and so forth. But I thought I'd give you an opportunity to tell us, something else, like conference schedule or your coordinates, how people could reach out to you, or however else you would like to close this. Or we can keep on going.
You can go as long as you want, but from my set fencing, I was actually the under 19 fencing champion of the state of Indiana. And I learned it in a program called Upward Bound. They had a guy who taught me fencing, and so I go to the team and I tried out, and the captain of the team said, this guy's pretty good. And I think we'll let you on the team. So I eventually became Purdue Epee fencing team captain. So I'm an NCAA collegiate athlete that they paid nothing. I mean, I think you had to pay them money to do it.
You had to buy the equipment.
Yeah. But I remember doing.
Fencing touche pussycat.
Yes.
I was
Errol Flynn.
fencing. I was thinking fencing, building fences.
No.
I've done that though, with a come along where you got to pull that fence.
Yeah,
that's what made me work a whole lot harder once I got a job, is I didn't want to do that anymore. I'll tell you, digging fence posts is painful.
Don't ask me how I was thinking fencing, and then it clicked.
I actually in college joined the fencing club, but in high school I had practiced karate, and I noticed that kind of like the stances similar, and the blocks and the parries and so forth were similar. So it, wasn't.
Sure.
I was good enough as a beginner to at least not get stabbed.
I feel like we had no funding, and we went to Fence Notre Dame, and we were beating them, and the captain is so mad. And he's like, oh no, you're fine. He goes, I just have to give him a hard time. He said, I found this guy in Egypt, and another guy was from some other country. And I was like, wow, and we're beating them. He was not happy about it. And I thought, well, I'm a Marine. I can't lose. I mean, I look at it differently.
Yeah.
How about you guys? You guys ever have a war room story in the war room where they're like throwing arrows from everywhere?
Actually, I could always tell, because I came from a software development background, but back in the day, you could always tell when a team was in trouble, because they would put everybody in a conference room and they would start ordering food like pizza, breakfast, lunch.
There you go. Yes.
And then usually what would happen was they would after about a week or so of this, and sometimes it would go on longer, they would wind up renaming the project and giving it a different schedule.
The place in Iowa, we would do that. We had all these stacks in the war room, and nobody of the cleaning would ever go in that room. They were scared to death to do anything because it might break something. So somebody has a picture of me with one of these vacuums on my back where I'm kind of cleaning up, because it's the entire floor is, covered with potato chips and Doritos and Cheetos and stuff like that.
And that's when I learned the proper way to eat pizza. You just take the two slices together, slap it together like that, and go for it.
Or fold it over. How about you, Rob? The war room,
The war room.
where they're all yelling. They're
Oh,
the decibel level's a little high. I think the food is to
Yeah.
like bring the decibel level back down, but
The food is to bring the decibel level back down. My funnest, worst, most interesting war room story. I was working on a project with the US government, and I'm not going to tell which department.
yeah.
Okay. And we had a system that was bringing in about 30 million transactions a month.
Wow, that's big.
Well,
Not anymore. Not anymore. But back
not
then.
anymore.
Back
Not,
then.
This was 2013, 2014. And the system was hovering at about 40% CPU all the time. And if you looked at it, it's like, it's one of those, you turn it on, check it in the morning, go, yeah, it's still running fine, because it was a pure insert system. And then at night, a batch job picked up the transactions and moved them on.
Wow.
So we got a call saying, we're going to add some little bit more load to this. And we're like, how much?
Uh-oh.
And they said 750,000 transactions.
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
we're doing 30 million.
750,000 transactions. That's
a lot, but it's like, well, we're doing 30 million now, no problem, no problem. CPUs, we have plenty of resources.
But were you near the top level of the
No,
system? Because I
no.
tell you, when you're nearby, you don't know it until you hit it.
Trust me, it gets better.
Okay.
It gets really good. We did not calculate in human ingenuity. Those 750,000 transactions, everyone who had to submit the transaction waited until 10 minutes before it was due on midnight. And
Wow.
every one of them hit the submit button simultaneously.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And then my phone rings.
That would be a problem.
Well, it got more interesting because there was a bug in the system. If you hit because they weren't getting the email back saying, yes, we got your transaction. So they would hit the submit button again. The bug in the system was every time you hit the submit button, it did the transaction again.
Wow.
And we got DOS'd by our own customers. I get the phone call. It's like, Oracle's down, and I gave them my standard answer. It's the network.
And were you paged back then, or was it a phone call?
It was a phone call. As a matter of fact, my wife was so accustomed to it. The phone call coming in, the phone ringing, she'd pick it up and say, "Hey, Todd." It's like, if it's a 2 a.m. phone call, it's Todd.
Yeah.
Hey, Todd, here's Rob. And we spent a week just doing everything we could just to get our transactions through the system. It wound up taking an act of Congress because all of these people who had hit submit, technically they did it on time, but if they went beyond that period, they were penalized. And so Congress had to get involved and go, we're going to give you a waiver this time, give you a little breathing room. And, and I remember sitting there and I go, yes, I was the one who said we could handle the load. Yep, fire me. They go, no, not a one of us thought that everybody would wait until the last minute.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that would increase the decibel level.
Yeah.
But I think it's these uncomfortable situations that sharpen us. I use that
Oh yeah.
Stress inoculation training, and those kinds of things that are what give you the confidence, especially if you learn something from it, and that gives you the confidence to solve the problem the next time, because you're the only one who's not sweating, in the war room, right? You're trying to solve the problem. You take in the information, you get to work, you start trying to solve the problem. But I think without those situations that we call, war stories, or, they were catastrophes at the time, but we learn from them, and then we build on our experience from there.
I would tell people think of the billions of years of time. God has put you here right at this time. Don't waste it. First of all, don't just take it easy. Oh, some people kind of slowly go along. I think people in the Oracle world are driving very fast NASCARs usually comparative to other people. But I say, God put you just the right time. You must be just the right person, or understand who or what you need to pull together.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you one question you can ask me. And you can make it the last question, however you want to do it. But did my wife ever say no when the phone rang? When the phone rang, in the old days, the phone would ring in your house, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And did she ever say no?
That is a good question. Did she ever say no? Did she ever say no?
So she would, and you used to have a pager back then, of course. And the pager would go off, and it was late, and I'd say, I can't get it. So I looked at it, and I'm calling, and my wife. So now I'm on the phone talking, understanding what the situation is. And my wife's like, no, that's it. No more. These people call you in the middle of the night, expect you to run over in the middle of the night to some company at 2 a.m. And I said, no, I gotta fly to Detroit. I gotta get in there right now. I can't give away too much. And she said, no. And I said, it's a medical place. I'll just leave it at that. And I said, and it's the transplant system. And they're hitting 99%. And they're like, we're scared to do anything, or it's just going to shut down. And she goes, fine. And that was the only time she ever said no. So I went there, and I want to tell you, I go there and I actually changed the SGA, fixed a couple queries. I made sure I did very little, because one thing would have messed it up. And I didn't sleep the whole night. And they're like, you got to wait till tomorrow morning and it'll kick back in. I could not sleep the whole night, just waiting did we get enough room where we could play a little and not stop this thing? And it was down to 86% or something. I was like, oh, thank goodness. Now we can actually tune some queries and play around and get this thing in better shape.
Then that's better than my story, where I actually literally had to give blood to test my own computer program.
Oh
my! I was working for, I don't know, many years ago.
That is good.
I wrote a program to collect data off of a clinical chemistry analyzer. Not that complicated, but I go to the hospital, and the doctor there, who had the clinical chemistry analyzer in his office, so we were going to test this program, but I figured he had blood, right, that he could put in the machine.
Yeah, sure.
And he goes, roll up your sleeve. And he calls the nurse into the room, and I actually had literally rolled up my sleeve so he could take some blood and run it through the machine so he could test my program, if my program worked.
And did it work, or did you have to give more blood?
Okay. But yeah, so that was very interesting. That's literally having to give blood to test your own program.
I worked for a place where it was the college entrance exam, and I kept signing up one of my kids to do the entrance exam. And he kept taking the test. He's like, I'm not taking this thing anymore. I'm like, I already paid for it, because I had to test it. And I did not solve the system on the first try. It wasn't fast enough. And so I kept making it faster. So I kept signing him up for tests. And eventually he wouldn't do it anymore. He's like, I've already got accepted. I'm done.
Well, Rich, you're very confident. I was just wondering if you ever had imposter syndrome earlier in your career. I know I suffered that from a little bit, where I was thinking, do I really know my stuff? Because I know there's a whole lot of people around here who know, much more than I do, and so forth. And I, have in the past been a little bit more reserved and so forth. But have you ever experienced that?
I always look at life, and you're going to do the best you can. And I try to be honest with people and say, I may or may not be able to do this. I don't think I ever felt like I was an imposter, but I feel like I've been in a lot of situations where I was the imposter to them at this company. And am I going to make them look bad by doing things well? I remember going to one of the oil companies and I was teaching a class on tuning. I said, why don't you have me, do some of the tuning? He goes, because that's our job. Our guys should be able to do that. We shouldn't even have to call you to do a class. So I felt like the imposter a lot because of that. But I think, in the world of machine learning, I feel that at times where, I don't know certain algorithms that somebody has in AWS or they have it in open source, a nice open source algorithm. Some of them that win the Kaggle competitions and these are people that have data where you can, run different algorithms and show that you've built the best solution for this particular problem. And I've always felt a little short of that, but I remember getting their data for COVID in 2020. And they said, we're looking for people to try to look through all the documents of COVID. And this is kind of interesting, ties back to the other thing I said. And we want you to see if you can, build a nice system for this. Well, I'm not a developer, although I used to be a developer and I've done apps and I've done all these things, but I'm not an Apex guy. But I went to an Apex class once where the guy showed me stuff and I thought, you know what, I've got Oracle Cloud. You get, since you're an Oracle Ace, one of the benefits, they give you a free account where you could do some stuff. And I took this Kaggle data, downloaded it. And what did I find? That a lot of it was good for nothing. So first of all, and this was the first time COVID, there might have been, 50 cases in the US. And so I get all this data and I thought, well, I'm going to build an Apex app and I start to build it. But before I could even get to it, the data was just so dirty. There was so much duplicate data. And then I had to figure out how to do a link to the document. Sometimes they'd have different links and I want to have links in the Apex. And I was like, I have no idea how to do this. I guess I felt like an imposter in the Apex world, but I built this and you could do REST endpoints, which means then I could have a website and I go up to my wife and daughter at that time. And I go, hey, look at this new app. And I go, look at this. You could search this and find out if one of your symptoms is COVID. And I said, it searches through all the different documents. And I thought about putting it out publicly. And I thought, no, I don't even, somebody could mess up the day. I just don't feel that comfortable with my Apex app. I felt like an imposter, but I used it personally. And you would see a lot of those things. And it just basically had every document. So if somebody's out there, Kaggle is a great place to play with data to make sure you do things like that. But Oracle's machine learning is quite impressive. And I could tell, I won't tell you who I was talking to at the time since we're being recorded, but it was somebody at Oracle. And I was saying, you guys, machine learning is great, but it's so too expensive. And so then later I came back and this person said, you know what, we don't make that much money on machine learning. We're going to make it free. Don't tell anybody yet, but we're going to make it free, completely free. OML, data miner, all this stuff is going to be free. I said, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I remember.
And it happened. And I thought, wow, just because, and I just did it as an offhand comment. I go, this thing is great, but you overcharge for it. So nobody's ever going to use it. And they were like, I'm going to look into that. And then they call me up and they go, hey, the announcement's coming, but don't tell anybody. It's going to be free. And I was like, wow. If all these people could each send me a few dollars, that would work out nicely.
I see Oracle does things like that all the time, such as DBMS privilege capture. Used to be you could only run it if you had database vault license. And I was talking to several people and I'm like going, people need to use this throughout. And so they said, okay, fine. You can run it. It comes with a license now. It comes with your enterprise license. You can run it. So you can do privilege analysis. And all it takes is for people like us, we'll sit down sometimes over a beer and go, hey, guys. And they listen to us.
Yeah, back to what you said earlier, Roger. All the features people forget in they get up to the next release, but they don't implement all the great features that are out there. I mean, and there's so much free stuff. I mean, they just came out with 20 gigs of Golden Gate free. People don't know that. That's an amazing benefit.
Hmm.
Rob's like, hey, I like that. There is an asterisk, which it's if you're moving it to the cloud,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
you could bring things in, but not necessarily out.
Oh, we're
Another
going back
data
to the old Oracle days. You can check your data in, but you can't check your data out.
I'd read the fine print to make sure. I'm not gonna. At Oracle, they said whatever you talk about, don't ever talk about licensing.
Oh God, yes.
They're like the people that know it, they have a hard time with it sometimes.
Mhm.
I hate talking about licensing. And if anybody else ever asks me about licensing, the first thing I'll say is I am not an attorney.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Well, AWR has been excellent, you know, for in my field anyway of tuning, and
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
most companies I've worked for have had that. And even if they haven't, you know, a lot of that stuff that you do in AWR was transferable to StatsPack, or I even found ways of snapshotting my own $V tables to sort of build a bootleg version of active session history.
There you go.
In
No,
cases
that's great. No, Oracle really does have a lot of great information. I mean, it's very deep. It reminds me a little bit of machine learning in a way. The depth of it just keeps going down.
Now, some Oracle tools, they run the machine learning in the database. So that would, you know, be, I guess, the advanced analytics stuff. But then there's also tools that run the machine learning on, you know, like a laptop or, you know, your personal computer. Is that right? Do I get that?
That's correct, but I generally run it just in the cloud is the way to go, because then you're on an Exadata. You don't have to back it up. You don't have to secure it. I mean, it's automatically tuned. It's automatically put the patch on before I know it.
So
And
most of that stuff is wrapped like PL SQL and wrap it in PL SQL, and then you can call it from some of it from SQL statements, or is it just all PL SQL?
so the best way to look at it, and people in data science would know this, they use either Jupyter notebooks, Zeppelin notebooks, but it literally is just like you're in SQL Plus, and it's a series of SQL and PL SQL statements that you run to do different things. You can run different algorithms. You could try different algorithms within the same thing. So an example would be if I wanted to classify into good and bad customers. There's 7 different algorithms I can use in Oracle. So what I do is I take 60% of the data for algorithm 1 and I train the model. Then I take 40% with that same algorithm and see if they found did it separate the good and bad customers. Then I do it for the second algorithm. Then I do it for the third one. I used to do that, but it could be SQL, PL SQL. It could also be Python, or it can be R. And Oracle has examples for all of those, just to let you know. But I would do those side by side, and I built a notebook full. It was probably 50, 60, 70 pages long, because I had all kinds of graphs, because I wanted to show things like ROC curves. If people are data scientists, they know what that is, or cumulative gain, or confusion matrix, and things like that. And these are things that show things like precision, you know, or accuracy. So if you're giving somebody a test for cancer, do I want it to be a false positive or a false negative? It falls in between. So depending on what I measure, I can change which one is more important between those. But when you could do it in all of them, but I did that, and it took me maybe a week to build this very long notebook. Then maybe it was, I don't know, 6 months later, Oracle came out with AutoML, which is automatic machine learning. And so I put in the exact same database, same data, same things I'm looking for, try to classify the data. Oracle builds the notebook for me in Python. It took them 4 minutes to do what it took me a week to do. So if you want to look at, you know, where's your job? I always tell people your job is to get assistance from the autonomous DBA. Get assistance from AutoML so that you can build better things. Chat GPT, I'm not 100% sure on, because it couldn't answer any of the questions that were in my book. Now, maybe my book is not out there publicly online that they could search through it for the answer, but they couldn't find any answer on one of them. when they,
Actually, I had Chat GPT. I asked it to build me a 2-level taxonomy of Oracle performance metrics, and
sure.
and it built this great categorization of those performance metrics. And I just cut and paste them from Sysmetric Summary. So take these 161 metrics and build me a 2-level taxonomy. Now I had to work with it a little bit because it definitely didn't give the right answer.
Sure.
But after several iterations, it actually had I thought it had all the taxonomical categories that I came up with on my own, plus a few that I hadn't even thought of. So,
And I don't know, did you go to that last ACE call?
I did
I
not.
wasn't on it. No.
Something that was great on that. And I'll give you this one. Chat GPT, they said you cannot copyright stuff that you have learned in Chat GPT. So that was one of the things. I think it was Tim Hall that said it. There's no copyright for the stuff you build. It has to be a human, number one. He said, number two is it doesn't invent anything new. So you can never copyright something because it's coming from somewhere.
And
so that was kind of good to know.
And the one thing I've noticed about Chat GPT, and when people think artificial intelligence, okay,
sure,
there are several different types of intelligence. So you've got fluid intelligence, you got all kinds of different intelligence. And I'm the guy who will say, what do you think about something where there is not a 1 + 1 = 2, or write me a piece of code that will do this. I want to know the opinion about something.
Yeah.
Wholesale fail on everything. Either it goes, I cannot talk about an individual because I don't know, and being politically correct, or it's going, I have no clue what you're talking about. But what I will give it, and this is just artificial intelligence, I started firing some very esoteric Christian theology questions at it, and seeing how it replied to those. I did not totally agree. However, I would say what it would come out with was well argued.
I always leave the Christian theory at God is good and he wants everyone to make it to heaven. As long as you remember those things, you're going to be all right.
Yeah, but
you treat people pretty good.
Yeah, but when you sit there and you go, okay, Esther, we'll have a conversation about Esther. There's some esoteric.
She was a tough woman.
Oh yeah,
risked her life.
But we have a lot of esoteric things in theology, and a lot of things that people don't understand. And so you either have to go back and understand the original language, because what we're reading is translations.
Yeah, there were a lot of enemies, and Esther was Jewish, and she was the wife of the king, and she had to ask him something, and you can't ask the king. The king has to summon you for you to even go there. So if she goes there without him asking, you could be killed.
Right.
But all she brought to his attention is this guy talked you into, I think it was Haman, talked you into killing all the Jewish people. Well, I'm just happy to be one of them. Keep that in mind. And that didn't turn out so well for the other guy.
Right.
Who was trying to get rid of him.
Gallows turned against him.
And I'm not Jewish. I always thought the interesting part was if you look at the word God in Hebrew, it looks like 7777 to me. And I'm like, is that where Vegas, where that's you're lucky?
Okay, now I have to go look that up.
There you go. I could get it. It's on the wall over here. Looks like, but yeah, it's interesting. So do you want one last story? Non-oracle?
Yeah, we can take one last non-oracle about trees.
Non-oracle story where I probably invented something. I'm going to tell you about trees. You cut down a tree that's 100 feet, and I've done it. It's like you're dropping a train engine. So you better know what you're doing. So don't just cut it down without learning first. But I was at an IOUG, and we had a Tusk event after. And it was at whatever the aquarium was. I don't know, whatever city we were in. Which I've never had. I mean, it was like the most money we ever spent on something to have this event. And I'm late. because my talk ran late. Don't ask me why. I've actually run a talk so late in Moscone Center that it was locked and we couldn't get out. We had to find a door with a security guard. But anyway, so I'm late again, I'll just say. And I walk outside and it's starting to rain. I'm like, oh no, it's raining. It's going to rain. You know, I'm wearing a suit. I got to get there. I need to be there in 5 minutes. And a cab goes by, you know, with, I don't know what the sign was on top of it, some sign, something, but it caught my attention and I run up to it. I'm like, taxi. And he looks as he's going by and he's like, and I'm like, taxi. The light turns right up ahead. I chase down, run all the way to the light. It's about a block, still red. And I look and I go, taxi. And he rolls down the window and he goes, where are you going? And I tell him where I'm going. And he's like, all right, I'll take you. And so I get in and I thought, at least I got a taxi. And so he's driving me there. And I say, and it smells good inside this car. And I go, are you heading home or what are you doing? He goes, no. He goes, I'm pizza delivery guy. And I go, pizza delivery. And this is maybe 15 years ago. I go, pizza delivery. I go, why did you stop? He goes, you were just so insistent. He said, I thought, you know, if he's not going too far, I'll take him. And what did I invent? I invented Uber and I didn't even know it. But hey, I tell people that story. I go, nothing's impossible. You gotta believe that in your mind. Think of all the things people used to think were impossible 100 years ago and how possible they are. I think we're heading into the twilight zone of life where you're really hitting this acceleration stage that's going to happen. But hey, we're ready for it.
Yeah.
Life is good. Life is interesting.
Life is good. God is good, Rob. That's all you got to know.
Amen, brother.
Looking out for you.
I'm an old Southern Baptist who went to Catholic school.
You cut trees down like me and Roger. You say a few prayers before that tree goes.
No.
Especially the 100-footer.
I say a few prayers that it's the right tree. Otherwise, my wife gets very upset.
That's right. Don't cut the dogwood.
I've had a lot of tree accidents, but those are for another time.
You should hear his one tree where he got.
Yeah, I dropped the tree on myself once. I mean, it didn't actually drop.
Not on him.
The tree was sliding on another tree, and it hit me and pinned me against yet another tree. And I could feel my breath getting squeezed out of my lungs and hear like little crunching sounds and so forth.
And you barely made it out, right?
Yeah, the tree broke where I had been cutting it, so it got hung up on another tree, and I figured I'll just take off the first log, and maybe everything will be good.
See, Roger obviously is living right. He took care of him. I remember where my daughter, who worked in a hospital, said, "You got to get a helmet. You can't cut trees without a helmet." So I finally find my wife is like, I don't care what you spend. So I buy the best helmet there is, right? I cut a tree down. It's leaning. It's easy to know where it's going. Similar to you, you're thinking about the tree you're cutting. And all of a sudden, something hits me in the helmet. And there was a vine connected to the end of that tree I was cutting, which pulled the limb off the tree right down onto me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, glad I have a helmet.
First day?
Yeah, the first day I ever wore it.
And here is my tree cutting down story.
All right.
I live in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, on the water. So our back acreage is conservation easement. Okay. If I cut down a tree, it's a $10,000 fine.
Oh, wow.
All right. Yeah. The county will come out and say, you can cut down this tree, this tree, this tree, this tree. Which is fine. When we first bought the property, the county forester came out and was, very generous and, helped us out. And then my wife's a master watershed steward. But anyways, there was one tree that was dead right next to the trail going down to the water. And the county forester goes, no, you can't cut that down. Bugs live in it.
Oh, wow.
It is habitat for bugs, which brings out the woodpeckers, and he's talking the whole food chain eventually, And I'm sitting there and I'm going, it's dead. And it's next to the trail.
It's taking down the apartment building though.
Well, it's back in the woods. It's not hitting anything except other trees. And then we had a bad storm and the tree fell and then started leaning against another tree. All right. So it's like this, it's dead. To walk down to the water, you had to walk underneath.
Oh, wow.
That.
That's known as a widowmaker, just to let you know.
Yeah.
In the woodsman terms.
Yes. And every time I went down, and I kept thinking it's a $10,000 fine if I cut it down without permission, call the county forester and they go, yeah, we'll be out in a couple of months.
Oh,
And then
wow.
finally, I'm like going, you know something? I'm taking it down. Go down there with a chainsaw.
You should use a rope, not a chainsaw, and pull it down. But go ahead. If it's a widowmaker.
I like power tools.
Like the
Okay.
excitement. Okay.
I have to hear the sound of an engine.
You sure you're not a Marine?
Amen, brother. Wait, that was more like a sailor. So anyways, I cut it and so it's like this, and I cut it and the tree goes like this. And then,
that's what happens.
And then it's buried in the next one. And then I cut it again and it did it like 3 times. And I'm like, I've got to get this thing to fall.
It gets more straight up and down. Yes, this is why you don't do that. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm talking to my wife and she goes, well, my best friend's an arborist. Let me call her. And she comes out to the house and, and she's looking and she's walking around the tree, doing, and then if we cut here, and I'm sitting there and she's doing this Rain Man thing, all these calculations are going through her head. And then she finally goes, cut right here, cut right there. And it falls back the other way, away from the trail. And I'm like going, how did you do that? And she goes, I don't know. I just know how to do it.
I mean, that's one of the more important things is look at the tree first. Where does it want to fall? That's where you want it to fall. And make sure there's no vines connected.
Yeah.
And widowmakers pull them down with a rope.
And I can just bring my truck down with the come along and just click, click, click.
And to Roger's point, if you cut a tree down, know where it's going to fall, and is that going to cause a problem?
Well, I
had to hit something else
the other day, and it was a dead pine tree, and it was leaning towards my fence, and I didn't want it to hit the fence, so I got my tractor and I put the bucket up 8 feet high, and I'm pressing on the tree before I cut it, and I start thinking to myself, if that tree falls the wrong way, it's going to tip over,
knock this whole bucket.
And tip my tractor over. So I said, I got a solution for that. So I took a chain, wrapped it around the tractor and chained it to a tree. And then,
smart man.
Thankfully it didn't go in the direction of the bucket. So it just sort of slid along the bucket and went down and crashed in the driveway instead of
Sometimes I will call somebody instead if I think it's dangerous. But I know we're off subject a little. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, DBAs, cutting down trees, it's kind of the same thing. Tuning,
it's kind of like a tree cutter tuning oracle. I don't think it's a great idea.
I always just want to make sure I've got a clean path to run in case something goes wrong.
That's right. Yeah,
that's important. Yeah,
I can buy another chainsaw.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it.
This was a blast.
That was fun. Let me know again if you want to chat.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you again.
You guys have a great day.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Y'all have a good one. Good night.
Godspeed.